I should have known something was wrong when I saw those rose petals leading down the dimly lit hallway of the Blackwood Hotel. They weren't the vibrant red I'd scattered earlier that afternoon. These were darker, almost brown, like dried blood against the cream carpet. But I was too drunk on champagne and wedding bliss to notice the difference. Room 823's door was slightly open when I reached it, golden light spilling into the hallway. I assumed James had arrived before me and was preparing some romantic surprise. After all, that's what newlyweds do, right? Create perfect moments for each other. The wedding reception had run late, and we decided to meet at the room separately after saying goodbye to our guests. The suite was everything we'd hoped for, expansive and elegant, with a king-sized bed draped in white linens and rose petals. A bottle of champagne sat in an ice bucket by the window, but James wasn't there. His suit jacket was thrown across an armchair, his bow tie discarded on the floor. The bathroom door was closed, and I could hear water running. "Honey?" I called out, knocking on the bathroom door. No response. The sound of running water continued steadily. I turned the handle. It wasn't locked. Steam billowed out as I opened the door, and for a moment I couldn't see anything through the thick fog. The mirror was completely fogged over, water droplets running down its surface like tears. The clawfoot tub was overflowing, dark water spilling onto the black and white tiles. Rose petals floated on the surface like tiny red boats. My wedding dress dragged through the puddles as I approached the tub, my heart beginning to race. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The water wasn't just dark, it was red. I ran from the bathroom, gasping for air. The window was open, cold air whipping the curtains into a frenzy. We were 8 floors up, but I rushed to look anyway, my hands gripping the windowsill as I leaned out into the night. The street below was empty except for a few parked cars and scattered puddles reflecting the streetlights. That's when I noticed James's laptop open on the desk, its screen glowing in the dim room. I hadn't seen it at first. My hands were shaking as I approached it. The screen showed an email inbox, James's work account. The most recent email was from someone named Sarah Mitchell, sent just 3 hours ago. The subject line read, "I won't let you marry her." Next to the laptop was James's briefcase, papers spilling out onto the desk. My trembling fingers rifled through them. Bank statements, letters, photos. Photos of James with a woman I'd never seen before. They looked happy, intimate. The timestamps showed they were taken just 2 weeks ago. I found a receipt for another engagement ring, dated 6 months before he proposed to me. I grabbed the hotel phone, but the line was dead. My cell phone was in my clutch, which I'd left downstairs at the reception. The room suddenly felt too small, too quiet, except for the continued sound of running water from the bathroom. I had to get out, get help. But as I turned toward the door, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There were drops of blood on the train of my wedding dress. I hadn't noticed them before, but now they seemed glaringly obvious against the white fabric. They created a trail leading from the bathroom to the main door of the suite. As I followed them with my eyes, I noticed something else. Bloody fingerprints on the doorframe. I ran into the hallway, not caring that I was leaving bloody footprints behind me. The corridor seemed endless, the exit sign at the far end glowing an eerie green. I could hear doors opening behind me, but I didn't look back. I just ran, my wedding dress hitched up in my hands, my bare feet slapping against the carpet. I burst into the stairwell, the heavy door slamming behind me. The sound echoed up and down the concrete shaft. 8 floors. I started down, gripping the metal railing, my dress catching on the rough steps. That's when I heard it, a door opening somewhere above me, followed by footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. The lobby was deserted when I finally reached it. The chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor, and my reflection in the massive mirrors looked like a ghost. White dress stained with red, mascara running down my cheeks. The front desk was empty. The computer screens were dark. Where was everyone? I could see freedom through the glass doors, the street, a few parked cars, the neon hotel sign reflecting in puddles on the sidewalk. But as I reached for the handle, a hand grabbed my shoulder. I screamed, spinning around to face my attacker. But it wasn't James. It wasn't Sarah Mitchell either. The detective showed me the newspaper clippings the next day. 5 other brides, all married at the Blackwood Hotel, all disappeared on their wedding nights over the past decade. Their bodies were never found. Their grooms all had similar stories: separate arrivals at the hotel room, running water in the bathroom, open windows, missing brides. But they'd never found any evidence of foul play until now. They found James's body in the bathtub 3 days later. The medical examiner said he'd been dead before I even reached the room. Sarah Mitchell was never found, but they discovered she'd been his fiancée 6 years ago, another bride who disappeared from the Blackwood Hotel on her wedding night. The security cameras showed no one entering or leaving our room that night except James and me. The Blackwood Hotel closed down after that night. They say it's being demolished next month. Sometimes I drive past it late at night, looking up at the window of room 823. Sometimes I think I see rose petals falling from that window, drifting down to the street like drops of blood. But I never stop. I never get out of my car, and I never, ever look to see if someone's standing at that window, watching me drive away. The Wild Rose Farm had seemed like the perfect venue for our October wedding. Nestled in the rolling hills of Vermont, the restored barn gleamed with string lights and rustic charm. I remember thinking how beautiful everything looked as the sun set behind the maple trees, their leaves a symphony of red and gold. If only I'd known that sunset would be the last peaceful moment of my life. It started with the guest book. As the wedding coordinator, Marina was packing up the decorations. She called me over to the reception table. Someone had knocked over a glass of red wine, staining the leather-bound book's pages. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't wine at all. Scrawled across the final page in what looked like blood were the words, "You chose the wrong one." The barn was nearly empty by then. Most guests had left, and the catering staff was cleaning up. My new husband, Daniel, was outside thanking the last few relatives. Marina suggested it was probably just a drunk guest's idea of a joke, using red food coloring or something similar. But her hands shook as she closed the book, and I noticed she was wearing gloves she hadn't had on before. Daniel and I left in his father's restored pickup truck, borrowed specially for the wedding. The rain had started, drumming against the metal roof as we wound our way down the dirt road toward the highway. I was still thinking about the guest book, but I didn't want to worry Daniel. He was focused on driving, the windshield wipers struggling against the increasing downpour. The storm grew worse as we drove. The GPS signal was spotty, and somehow we'd taken a wrong turn. The paved road had given way to gravel, then dirt. Dense forest pressed in on both sides, our headlights barely penetrating the darkness ahead. That's when we saw the other headlight, a single beam weaving through the trees parallel to our road. The Pine Grove Motel appeared like a mirage through the rain. It wasn't the luxury hotel we'd booked for our wedding night, but the truck was running low on fuel, and we'd lost cell service miles ago. The neon vacancy sign buzzed and flickered, casting an intermittent red glow across the cracked parking lot. A rusted chain-link fence surrounded the property, broken in several places. The night manager barely looked up from his newspaper as he handed us the key to room 17. He had a map of the local roads, but it was dated 1985. When I asked about the highway, he just shrugged and said the storm had probably flooded the usual route. I noticed he had a fresh bandage wrapped around his right hand. The door to room 17 stuck in its frame, requiring Daniel to shoulder it open. The security chain was broken, hanging uselessly from its mount. Inside, the room smelled of mothballs and cigarettes, despite the no smoking sign. The carpet was worn to threads in a path between the door and bathroom, like countless pacing feet had marked their worry into the fibers. I hung my wedding dress in the bathroom and changed into a nightgown, careful not to let it touch the dubious floor. Daniel flipped through channels on the ancient television, each one showing only static. In its blue glow, I caught a reflection in the screen. My veil, which I'd taken off hours ago, hanging from the back of the room's only chair. But I'd left my veil at the barn. The bathroom light flickered when I turned it on. The mirror was clouded with condensation, though neither of us had used the shower. As I watched, words began to appear in the fog, as if written by an invisible finger. "Check the guest book." My heart stopped. The guest book was in my overnight bag, wrapped in a plastic cover to protect it from the rain. With trembling hands, I retrieved the book from my bag. As I opened it, something fell out. Newspaper clippings, dozens of them that hadn't been there before. They were yellowed with age, spanning decades. Each told the same story. Brides gone missing from their wedding nights, their bodies found weeks later. Every single one had signed a guest book at Wild Rose Farm. I ran to wake Daniel, but his side of the bed was empty. Through the window, I saw a light moving through the trees behind the motel, the same light we'd seen while driving. As I watched, it stopped moving. Then it started getting closer. I could hear footsteps on the gravel outside our door, slow and deliberate. The room's phone was dead when I tried it. My cell phone showed no service. On the nightstand, next to my wedding ring, the alarm clock's red digits flickered to 3:33 a.m. That's when I noticed the smell, a metallic tang that hadn't been there before. It was coming from the bathroom, along with the sound of running water. The bathroom door creaked open at my touch. The tub was overflowing with dark water, splashing onto the cracked tiles. Wet footprints led from the tub to the door, but they weren't coming out of the bathroom. They were going in, and they weren't Daniel's size. They were small, delicate, like a woman's bare feet. The police found the guest book exactly where I'd dropped it. The DNA in the blood matched Marina, our wedding coordinator. When they searched her house, they found albums filled with wedding photos spanning 30 years, every bride who had disappeared. She'd been the coordinator for every wedding, but they never found Daniel. Wild Rose Farm stands empty now. The barn's string lights hang dark and broken, swaying in the winter wind. Sometimes locals report seeing lights moving through the surrounding forest at night, like someone searching for something, or someone. They say if you look through the barn windows, you can see a bride walking between the empty chairs, checking names in a leather-bound book. But her face isn't right. It looks like Marina's, and she's always smiling. I used to love walking past Carson's department store as a little girl, imagining my future wedding registry. Now, 20 years later, I was finally creating one of my own. The store had hardly changed. Still the most prestigious retailer in downtown Chicago. Still the place where wealthy families establish their wedding registries. If I'd known what that registry would lead to, I would have eloped. The gifts started arriving 3 weeks before the wedding. Each morning, I'd find another perfectly wrapped package outside our penthouse door. Michael, my fiancé, would laugh at my excitement as I added each item to our spreadsheet. Wedgwood china, Waterford crystal, Georg Jensen silverware. Everything matched our registry exactly. Almost too exactly. It wasn't until the 5th gift that I noticed something odd. None of them had shipping labels. No cards either. Just pristine wrapping paper with Carson's distinctive logo. When I called the store to check who had sent them, they had no record of the purchases. According to their registry department, no one had bought anything from our list yet. The registry consultant, Amanda, seemed troubled when I visited the store. She showed me my registry on their computer. Someone had been modifying it. Items were being added that I hadn't chosen. A set of Japanese kitchen knives, a marble mortar and pestle, an antique letter opener. All sharp, pointed things. When Amanda checked the system logs, the changes had been made from inside the store after closing hours. Our building's security cameras showed nothing. Each gift simply appeared between the 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. sweeps. The night guards swore no one had come up in the elevator. Michael suggested returning the gifts, but when we opened them, each item had been used. Water spots on the crystal, tiny scratches on the silverware, microscopic chips in the china. Like someone had hosted their own private dinner party with our things. The night before our wedding, we found a used champagne glass on our balcony, 40 stories up. It was from our registry, the same Waterford crystal pattern. There were wet footprints leading to the balcony door, but they disappeared halfway across. The police said someone must have accessed the balcony from another floor. but our building's exterior was smooth glass. There was nowhere to grab, no ledges to stand on. The wedding day started normally enough. We'd chosen the Drake Hotel's grand ballroom, and everything was perfect, until the catering staff noticed something missing from their prep kitchen, a carving knife from the exact set on our registry. The head chef was furious, certain it had been there during morning inventory. The building had been locked all night with security on every door. During the reception, my mother noticed her place setting was wrong. The silverware wasn't from the hotel's collection, it was our registry pattern, the same pieces sitting unopened in boxes at home. Every place setting at the head table had been quietly replaced when no one was looking. The hotel staff was baffled. The doors had been locked during the ceremony, and security was posted outside. I was heading to the restroom when I saw her, a figure in hotel staff uniform, pushing a service cart down a back corridor. Something about her movement seemed familiar. She turned slightly, and I caught a glimpse of her name tag, Amanda. The same Amanda from Carson's registry department. But when I called out, she disappeared through a service door that led to the kitchen. The kitchen was deserted when I entered. The staff was busy serving dinner in the ballroom. Amanda's cart stood empty by the prep station. Next to it was a knife block, and protruding from it was the missing carving knife, its blade dark with something that looked like blood. A clipboard hung nearby with a single sheet of paper, our registry list, every item checked off in red ink. I ran to find security. The head officer pulled up the kitchen cameras immediately, but they showed only static for the last 10 minutes. As he flipped through other cameras, we saw something strange. Every few seconds, Amanda would appear in a different corridor, always just for a moment, always getting closer to the ballroom. But her movement was wrong, too quick, too jerky, like a glitch in the system. We found the ballroom doors locked when we tried to return, locked from the inside. Through the glass panels, I could see the reception continuing normally. Michael was at the head table, laughing with our guests. No one seemed to notice that beside him, in my empty seat, sat Amanda. She was wearing my registry choices, the crystal, the china, the silverware. She was cutting her meat with the missing carving knife. The police investigation revealed the truth too late. Amanda Wells had worked in Carson's registry department for 30 years. Every decade, she would choose a bride, copy her registry exactly, and slowly collect each item. Then she would replace the bride at her own wedding reception. 7 brides had vanished this way, their belongings found arranged in perfect table settings in Amanda's apartment. But they never found Amanda. Carson's closed its registry department after that night. Sometimes, late at night, people say they see lights on in the wedding department, though that floor is now empty. Security guards report finding table settings arranged with stolen display items, each place set with the same pattern of crystal, china, and silverware. And sometimes they say, one of the mannequins in the window isn't a mannequin at all. She just stands there in a wedding dress, arranging and rearranging the table settings, trying to get them perfect.